undoubtedly inspire you to explore the true nature of your inner strength and resilience with his meaningful story. I don't think I can do justice to how much his presence means to me and so many here.
I'll use this. All right, so the talk tonight is called The Courage to Transcend, right? So, let me take this out of my copy for a second. Okay, so transcendence, right, is not overcoming. Transcendence is deepening down and expanding through truth. A lot of times we think like people, when you live with a disability, you're often empowered to overcome your disability. Well, you don't get to do that. You don't get to overcome the only body you're ever going to have. Right? So transcendence is a different thing. It's an expansion. It's a stepping into your life. So the courage to transcend, what is it that allows you, gives you the strength to actually live the only life you're ever going to have? You only get one. So now, what I want you to do, I'm a yoga teacher, and for the next half hour, I reserve the right to teach a yoga pose at any time. I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit strange, and you're going to resist. Some of you, especially out on a night like tonight, it's cold out, but I really would like you to take off your shoes. I'm serious. You're going to go like, what? I don't do that in public. And some of you aren't going to do it. You're going to decide not to do it. It's okay, but why wouldn't you let the dogs bark? What do you do at the end of a long day? You take off your shoes. Why? Because it feels like freedom. So some of you, like I'm looking at a guy over here, and there's no way we're moving to take off his shoes, right? He's thinking, I'd rather let my feet suffer. Right? But freedom for someone that lives with a disability has to come in all shapes and sizes. Freedom has to be realized as a sensation in the mind-body relationship. People with MS, people with spinal cord injuries, they don't get to have and get to all the places in the world, right? Our culture tries to empower them to do that, but I actually want you to take off your shoes more. Right? So, again, I think my compliance rate is probably about 30%. Right? Too bad. When I ask you what courage is, when I ask you, are you going to do something a little bit different? Are you going to step into a little bit different sense of yourself? That's a big question. I don't really care if you take off your shoes or not. I'm taking off mine because it feels good. And by the way, if you don't like your feet, I want to give a defense of feet for a second. If you were in a dark, sweaty place for about 16 hours a day, how do you think you'd smell? Seriously. And it's funny, our feet are our lightning rods for our displeasure with our bodies. Most people are afraid of their feet, and they pay them no attention. Their actual feet. This is even more intense when you start living with a disability, when your body starts to fail. Right? Do you know when you're agitated, your awareness goes up towards your head and away from your feet? And feet taking grounding, being grounded to the earth, being grounded down on the ground. That's one of the biggest injuries of living in a wheelchair, is that I don't get to touch the floor as much. I don't touch the earth as much. This is a huge injury. Right? That nobody, and a lot of you are walking around thinking it's not an amazing thing. It's not just walking. It's touching something consistently that grounds you. It's things like this. It's experiences like this we start to recognize what it is to be able to stand up, sit down, move in multiple directions. This is what it is to live in a body you don't have to think about. But the thing is, when you start living with something like MS, your body starts getting heavier. Things you take for granted, you aren't able to move like that anymore. Things, you get smaller. Your world gets smaller. But you know what? It's happening to everybody. Everybody's aging. Everybody in this room is leaving their body. Everybody. Everybody in this room is becoming disabled. Don't forget. So you may think it's about someone with MS or someone with a disability, but you know what? And you know what's beautiful about being alive? We all share the same fate. This isn't just a story of disability and trying to empower someone to overcome a difficult life. It's about you too. And I don't mean this as a depressing thought. I mean, what is transcendence? What is it when we actually share what's actually true more? When we support each other through the life arc? You know what I am? I'm a 13-year-old boy that woke up from a coma. I went to sleep next to my sister, snuggled in the back of our Volkswagen 412. My whole family was in the car. And we're driving home from Kansas City, Missouri to Duluth, Minnesota on the Sunday after Thanksgiving, on the beginning of a day just like today, before the snow. That cold, and we're driving, it's 32 degrees and misty, and we hit preferential icing and we tumble down an embankment. My father and sister are killed. I wake up, my mother and brother sustained minor physical injuries, and I go through a shredder. I broke my neck at C1, my back at T4, 5, 6. I broke both my wrists because I got my hands out in front of me to break my fall. My sister didn't. I filled the lung with fluid, and I sustained an injury to my pancreas that left me unable to eat for nearly 60 days. Back in 1978, they didn't feed you well through IVs, through tubes. They didn't have the ability to do that. So I went from a 119-pound, very athletic boy to 79 pounds in less than 60 days. I opened my eyes from a coma 3.5 days later, and I'm introduced to a completely different world. I'd like to tell you that in that moment, I get interviewed a lot, and they ask me, what happened in that moment? When did you realize, when you were told that you're never going to walk again, when you were told your father and sister were dead, what was it like? How did you garner the strength to go forward? And you know what? There was not a single moment when I decided. Like, you know what it was? I loved my family. I looked at my mother and my brother standing there desperate with incredible hurt in their eyes, having half of their family die, and they're standing there, and the fifth one, the third one, the tipping point, hanging in the balance. And I thought, at first, my first thought was, I have to live for them. Now, I don't think that was true. I needed to connect to my community in order to start the process of staying alive. I needed you. If you're a caregiver in the room, if you know someone, it's the connection to the community that is pivotal in healing. I want to just jump out of my story for a second and tell you an adaptive yoga class, what Mindy's doing, those classes. It's not just the yoga. It's not just the yoga as an intervention that helps MS. It's the community and the support that forms in the class. It's the shared experience. It's the families coming in and out that bring their loved ones there, that do the class with the loved one. It's the feeling of community in the class. I have a student who is a paraplegic, and he's 46 years old, was injured when he was 3. He comes to our adaptive yoga class. I teach adaptive yoga too. He comes to our adaptive yoga class because it's the only place he can actually be disabled, where he can do yoga with the body he actually has. What Mindy is creating and what Yoga Moves MS is creating is an environment of utter and complete acceptance of landing in the only body you're ever going to have, joining together and starting to move. It's not just a treatment. It's humanity disguised as yoga. It's humanity that heals us. It's shared connection. That's what happens in an adaptive yoga class. That's what I wish you'd all come to one of Mindy's classes and see it in action. I wish you'd see what it's like, people who are assisting, helping people who aren't, how a humanity gets unleashed in those classes. Quite frankly, I think we live in silos in our life and we don't get connected with enough people anymore. I think this is part of the tragedies of modern living. But stepping back to the 13-year-old boy, I end up, the nurses tell my mom to get me out of the hospital in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm about to read a really tough scene. And I'm going to read it because I want to introduce part of the mind-body relationship to you. And I want you to try to experience it a little bit in a second. The fact is that the way Western medicine saved my life, I think the car bounced over my chest. I went through 3 months of intense acute care, 6 months of total treatment, right? Still in the hospital. And I would not be alive without it. I am forever grateful. But what happened to that 13-year-old boy is part of his mind-body relationship got left on the table. It got left behind because it didn't quite make sense to the doctors and the nurses. They hadn't quite experienced the depths and subtlety in the mind-body relationship. So they told me, with my spinal cord injury, they told me to overcome my paralyzed body. I'm paralyzed from the chest now. They told me because they couldn't fix my spine, just like we can't fix MS. We don't know a cure yet. And so the response is keep moving, keep active, which is good, but you kind of overcome and do your life as if you're not affected by whatever condition you have. I was told to make my upper body really strong and learn to drag my paralyzed body through life. And I was a really intense athlete. I loved my body. I loved hanging upside down. I loved jumping. I loved rolling in the dirt. I loved my body. And I encountered, as a 13-year-old boy, I encountered a world. They told me the world was flat. They told me that the only thing that mattered is if I could move and control things. If I can't lift my legs, if I can't flex my legs and lift my legs around, then all I can do is overcome them and try to push through my life. This is a profound mistake. But the scene I'm about to read is an intense scene of what they did to me. I finally get to the Mayo Clinic and I had a broken neck at C1. And they were rolling me from side to side, but the doctors had chosen to put only a soft collar brace on my neck. And every time they rolled me, I'd pass out. And the nurses who were touching my body knew that it wasn't right, but they went to the doctors, and the doctors looked at the x-rays back in 1978, and they said, that's not a serious break. We don't have to worry about that. He's almost dead for about 9 other reasons. We're not going to worry about that. But the nurses knew that something was up. And they went up to my mom and said, if he were my son, I'd get him out of here. And my mom went to the doctor, and the doctor said, Paula, Matt is so injured. We don't know if he's going to get through the next 24 hours. But even if he does, and this is 1978, but not a lot of successful spinal cord injury people living then. 1978, he says, even if he survives this next 24 hours, his life arc is decimated. This is the beginning of the injury, not the end. Sometimes, Paula, it's better to just let your loved ones go. Mama Tiger comes out. Strongest force in the universe. For sure. She says, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to release him to the Mayo Clinic. And the doctor says, he's a good doctor. My mom really liked this guy. He said, he won't survive the trip. I can't sign the release. Well, we had to say, hey, we won't sue you unless you sign the release. You sign the release, and then I was off to the Mayo Clinic. So here's the scene. of what I encountered. And this, I would say, more than anything else, has changed the arc of my life, right? This scene. I got to figure out how I'm going to read this with the help of Mike, but we're getting there, right? Okay, so, and this is a hard scene. I'm glad you've already eaten dinner, right? But I say that, I'm going to teach no, it's good. You're down, yeah. No, I move around too much. I might actually elbow her in the head or something. But there's kindness coming from someone that's used to helping somebody. That's a daughter of someone with MS who knows to help whenever she can. So we go to the Mayo Clinic because we want more aggressive treatment. And it's basically for my neck. Okay, they're worried that I'm going to die. Above C1, if your brain goes unstable, you stop breathing. That's what the nurses were worried about. Aggressive treatment is what we wanted. Aggressive treatment is what we got. I am met by a team of doctors and brought into an open area. There is no time lapse. There is only action. A curtain is drawn and suddenly I'm enclosed in an artificial room. I suspect that this is an emergency room, but there is no telling. The view is not great from flat on my back. The lights overhead are bright and hot, yet my vision is dim. The faces and voices are like shadows, conversation swirling, no apparent direction. I'm surrounded by many bodies. Two men are standing particularly close by each of my shoulders. They whisper to each other right over my chest. The quality of their voices reveals their importance. Crisp, authoritative calm with a confident edge, but they have no faces. I see only arms, hands, torsos, and the undersides of their chins. They are holding some sort of hand tools. Unknown to me, I'm about to have 4 metal screws twisted directly into my skull. It is the first step in getting a halo cast, the ultimate in neck stabilization. Suddenly, 2 other men appear from above me and hold down my arms. 2 screwdrivers move toward my temples. My skin breaks. Warmness runs into my hair. The pain is sharp and getting sharper. A horrible sound explodes in my head, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. The screws continue to twist into my skull. The pressure is slow at first, building, and then exponential. My head no longer exists in 3 dimensions. No space between collapsing sides. Just 2 rocks grinding each other. Suddenly it's done. Assemblage of vision returns. Then out of nowhere it begins again, twisting right above each ear. This time I'm not in that body. There is no subject of that experience. I land in profound silence watching a boy. He is on a table. The sheet is drooped loosely over his lower body. He seems so small. Time is off track and I am everywhere. The doctors move, but things are held up, stretched out, turned over, pulled apart. A silent movie on a faltering projector. Suddenly, time finds its rhythm again. Sounds appear. The vacuum is broken. A timid voice I recognize as my own. Somebody help me. The path of realization, big or small, almost always starts bumpy. In my case, I was thrown off the cliff. In retrospect, I realized that this halo experience altered the course of my life. It left me with an insight. At a moment of intense physical pain, the fragile state of my living was able to move away from my body. The potential for dislocation between mind and body was dramatically revealed. The insight, however, was not the ability to disassociate. It was the silence that I experienced while it happened. This silence not only allowed me to separate from my body, but it was also sticky enough to maintain a life-preserving connection. Somehow, I stayed connected to that body, the boy below me. The silence within my consciousness both separated me and connected me simultaneously. This paradoxical insight still guides my life. The silence within our consciousness separates and connects and often does so simultaneously. So that was a very extreme example of an out-of-body experience. I don't really know scientifically what happened. I don't care. There was a time-lapse camera, would it cause a metaphysical entity floating up above that boy? I don't care. I just know what I experienced. I know what I experienced. I was drugged up to beat the band. I was almost dead. Extreme trauma came into my body, and my survival separated me from my body. And I survived. The 13-year-old boy in the first 75 pages of Waking learns the violence didn't stop at the accident scene, it began. The corrective violence saved my life, and I'll be forever grateful. I would not be here without the miracles of modern medicine. But the 13-year-old boy learned to merge with the lights. He learned to disassociate from his body. It was a survival move. Rocked by trauma, rocked by change, rocked by loss. The story of waking is the story not of moving away from your body when you have to. The story of waking is what happens if you get too comfortable being disconnected from your body. That's the worry. This is what we can't have happen with people with MS. Their bodies are beginning to not work as well. They're not being able to do things. The things they knew and identified as themselves, being able to do certain things, work at the place that Robin worked at, right? Now she's back volunteering because that's who she is. She continues through, right? But the things you get used to calling what you are, personhood, all of a sudden starts changing. You can get resentful with your body. You can start moving, stop moving. We already know, the doctors here will tell you that movement while you're going through MS is crucial to maintain, right? And that everything is making you want to pull away from your body and move out of it. Now, it really matters. Think about for a second why Dr. Boshi would share something like this. This is a leading Detroit metro neurologist. And he decides, with what little time he has, he decides to support Yoga Moves MS. This is a person that's working with MS all the time, recognizing the limitations of what medical science can offer now, realizing that physical therapy, occupational therapy, won't be able to communicate what he's experienced in yoga classes, recognizing that this is something he needs to get to his patients, realizing that insurance isn't going to pay for it, realizing that what has to happen is good people have to step forward into their lives, Mindy and her team and everyone that organizes this, because we need to get this to people who have every reason to leave their body and leave their loved ones sooner. And we can't let that happen. But it's going to happen outside of mainstream medicine, at least for a while. It's going to have to be supported by people like us, you and me, sharing experience together and supporting each other. Now let me back up for a second and talk again about this idea that your mind leaves your body. This is a very ordinary experience. That was extreme. Remember that time you're driving down the interstate and you're going 70 miles an hour and all of a sudden you startle with the realization that you haven't seen the landscape for 20 minutes? Oh my God. Remember that feeling? Where do you think you went? What do you think happened? How about that time someone's talking and they just won't stop? Wah, 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 wah. You're sitting there, you're thinking about your grocery store list. Oh my God, what's going on here? And all of a sudden they say your name, you snap back into phase. The brain disconnects from the senses all the time. Your mind-body relationship is in constant flux all the time. Aging is a slow disconnection from the control of the body. MS accelerates that eventuality. When you're looking at someone with MS, you're looking at your story. It's different. You know how and I'm not trying to scare you with stuff like that. I'm trying to tell you that at the core level, we share the same truths. That's why we all have to support each other through the same truths. That's why all of us have to have and find the courage to transcend. The courage to say, hey, there might be a different way. I don't just have to sit back and lose all this control. I can still live vibrantly and be in my whole body as this happens. Now this idea of the silence now, in the mind-body relationship, I want to read you a paragraph. I wrote this paragraph over 100 times, literally. Writing sucks, just so you know. You don't do it to make yourself, unless you're like Stephen King and making a lot of money, right? But this idea of silence within the mind-body relationship, all I'm trying to do is put a word on something we all experience. Now, I want to ask you, where do you think your true strength and resilience resides in your mind-body relationship? Do you think it's here? Do you think it's in your brawn? I don't think so. I think our paradigm, our medical paradigm, has separated injuries between physical and psychological and emotional. I don't think that's the right way to conceptualize human consciousness. I think that we miss the subtle parts of the mind-body relationship that are supposed to be part of movement. We miss the strength in the mind-body relationship. I'm just trying to put a word on it. For me, I'm auditory, so the word is silence. Okay? But put whatever word you want on it. We have to figure out how to access it. I have my mom right now. She's 80. About to turn 81 on December 3rd. If you read this book, and when you read this book, you'll see that my mom is a hero. You won't believe her strength. I'm choked up because it saved my life. So did my brothers, right? It's in me at a very deep level. Your caring for people with MS actually really matters. But here's what I mean by silence. Silence is the word we use to describe the empty presence we experience within our experience. Between our thoughts, between each other, between ourselves and the world. We feel the silence when we daydream, when we appreciate the beauty of a sunset, or when the love of our life truly walks away. It is an inward sense, often experiencing as a longing or an ache. It is a feeling of emptiness and fullness at the same time. The silence is the aspect of our consciousness that makes us feel slightly heavy. It is the source of the feeling of loss, but also of a sense of awe. You heard from Robin the day the couple thing was starting to happen in 1897 as she started to have MS start to take hold. In the ensuing few weeks and months, she started to realize losses of physical ability. Everyone's telling her just to have a good attitude about it. It's more than that. What I'm trying to say, there's a part of your mind-body relationship that has to go towards healing. She was able to do it. She's been able to do it. Has to go towards, it's not just a choice, it's not just having a good attitude. It's deeper than that. It's in us at a really deep level. So this word silence, we all know what it is. Anyone that works and has a full week, right? You know that angst, ache you have on Sunday before Monday starts? You know that feeling like, oh my God, how am I going to do it again? I'm going to get up and do the same thing again. Insanity is doing the same thing week after week and hoping with a different result. And somehow you end back up on Sunday and you're sitting there and oh my God, where is the strength to come from that's going to make you succeed through your week? If you think it's just your will, you're mistaken. It's the quiet moments. It's the part you don't share with people. Your strength isn't just your drive. It's deeper than that. We have to figure out how to access that part of the mind-body relationship, both for ourselves and for other people. This is going to be incredibly important for someone living with MS. If they keep trying to live in their body, the way that they lived in their body before they became symptomatic with MS, if they try to control their body with their outer body muscles, with the muscles on their body, and colliding and being strong, they're going to have a kind of loss that's going to break their heart. We've got to figure out and help them feel a different way to be in your body. When I said I wish you would volunteer in Yoga Moves MS classes, I want you to feel it too. I want you to know what happens when we support each other, when we help each other become, and when together comes the courage to transcend. Because transcendence does not happen in isolation. Transcendence is done by a group. It's done by stepping forward and supporting each other. That's how it happens. I want to do a weird thing because I'm a weird guy. I'm going to ask you to stand up in a second and partner, and maybe not with someone you exactly know. And I'm going to want you to stand up and stand back to back with each other. And learn, this is something we teach caregivers. How can you give and receive simultaneously? I've got the privilege of sitting with Robin and her husband Gary at dinner last night and watching how they care for each other and how Gary has to help. He told me stories about trying to carry the scooter upstairs in Italy, all these things that a caregiver does. Do you know how hard it also is to love someone with MS? Do you know that we've got to figure out how to support everyone in the room, in this room? And Robin, would you have it ever any other way? You get helped by your loved ones and you want so badly to give back? Isn't that the truth of living within a condition? So please stand up. Find a person, stand back to back. I know it seems goofy. I understand. Learn, let yourself be supported, right? Don't lean too hard on them. Don't knock them over, right? Literally, let their warmth, right? Let their support in their spine. Robin standing up. This is a beautiful moment between Robin and Gary. But literally, as you stand there, you are supporting another human being and you're receiving simultaneously. Let in the sensation of support. Hold each other up while you're getting held up. Feel their warmth. Let it quiet down your spine. Do you know that body presence helps you process stress? You probably don't. There's a whole bunch of mind-body truths I want to show you. But the question is, you could easily stand here and have it mean nothing. You could let it just be nothing. You could decide not to open. You could decide not to let your experience be deeper and supported. At the end of the day, it's up to you. The courage to transcend is a choice. It's made by a group where you allow yourself to support somebody and receive while you're supporting somebody. This is how we solve problems. This is how we share life. We sit quietly and work together in the moments that are life. But please, open more. Have the courage to be supported. Now here's the crazy thing. You're going to move like about an inch apart, and you're going to miss your buddy. Right? Move apart. And all of a sudden you see you grab not too far, stand back to back still. Right? You feel how much heavier you feel right away? Can you feel the change? Now, even though you're not touching, try to stay connected between you. try to open enough to feel their support? Are you courageous enough to open and be supported? Are you courageous enough to open and help other people? This is why we live. This is why we live. Thank you. I want you to sit down for a second. I'm not done, because now the big part of the night comes, and I got informed of this last night. Right? They said, Matt, without being overt, can you make a soft ask? Let me repeat about what happens in a yoga class. Let me repeat that it's humanity disguised as yoga. There are envelopes on each of your table. Let me repeat that the kind of depth of support that's not quite fully medically accepted yet is happening in Yoga Moves MS's yoga classes. A different level of the mind-body relationship is getting revealed by a yoga practice. I go around the country teaching PTOTs all around the country, trying to teach them how to include this in rehabilitation. But it's not accepted all the way yet. We've had discussions with Dr. Bocci. Maybe I'll be working in a medical school here, talking to students. I hope so. We need it to start from the medical students in my class. I hope they liked it. Right today, they're with me again tomorrow. I've heard good reviews from people that they liked it. This is the future too. Right? So take the envelope, recognize that you're supporting something that your loved ones aren't going to get every other way. Remember that they need to offer basically double the amount of opportunities. They need to train double the amount of teachers. They need to find double the amount of venues. We need to get this possibility that something can be different, that we don't just have to live in the body that gets heavier with gravity. That's something that only yoga can teach now. So please, my whole life is based on sharing this. I do this around the country, teaching yoga teachers. Mindy came into I was so lucky when she came into my training a few years ago. I am here because I knew she was going to do good things in the world. You know what you do? You invest in people. That's what you do. And I promise you, Mindy and her team are people worth investing in. I know they will honor whatever you can give. So please, if it's $5, my favorite donation this year was from an 86-year-old woman that is on fixed income, not having much, and she wrote and put a $5 bill in the car. And she apologized up and down. That was all she had to give. Imagine. Whatever you can give tonight, please give it. Whatever you can do. If you can give $100 million, include me. Include my body. I'm joking. Please, take the time, fill it out. I'm in love with the fact that you care enough to be here. Thank you.
Give it one for Matthew, ladies and gentlemen. I did have my shoes off, but I put it back on when I came up here. I followed the rules.